Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome back to coffee time. All right, little delay. Good morning. How are you? It is already Wednesday. Good morning to Donna and sunny Alberta and Mom, who is in Granby. Lori in Texas, great to see you. Sandra, second time here. I'm so happy to see you, Sandra. Welcome to coffee time. Welcome back. Oh, Catherine, I've been missing you in sunny Ohio. Beautiful day, huh? It's a beautiful day here, too. It's a really beautiful day. And in fact, as soon as I'm done with coffee time, I think I'm going to shoot over to Farmington, Connecticut, where there is a hook in. I'll have my mask on, of course, and see some of my buddies there. I think there's about 8 or 10 women who are over there hooking at the Hillstead Museum. If you remember a while back, I did a post in the Facebook group, Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club, about the Hillstead Museum because I went over with Liz, who's also in our group. She's over there now. She planned this hook-in, which will be on a regular basis for people who are in sort of the northwest of Connecticut or, the south of the Massachusetts. There's lots of places that you could attack from, and we're planning some other things too as time goes on. But we went over to the Hillstead because they have 4 beautiful older rugs. So we went over to look at them and speak to the person who was in charge there. And I think it's not the same person because we got some momentum going with doing maybe a talk, and I wanted to go back and work with them quite a bit. So maybe I'll work on that this afternoon. But as soon as coffee time's done, I'm going to shoot over to that part of Connecticut because it is a beautiful day and see who's at the hook-in and say hello, maybe take some photos and figure out what the possibilities are of getting a bit more ensconced there and checking out their very small but very pretty collection of rugs. So to be continued. Chrissy, good morning. Chrissy, I love the way your wool came out from the class. Leanne posted some wool too. It was such a fun class on Mother's Day night. Everybody who's been posting and sending photos of their wool, it is super, super pretty. And I can't wait to get started. I can see it right here, so I'm going to grab it. I can't wait to get started on this. I didn't have time yesterday. I've been cranking. But my little collection, and I'm going to actually do the Dutch flowers with it. I'm really excited about that. Just trying to get a few things done, be smart about my order. Chrissy, Sheila, good morning. And April, good morning. Heather, good morning. Thank you for that excellent heads up. Heather saw that my timing thing was wrong on the banner for the channel. That's just the kind of thing that I would miss. I'm excellent at missing the big things. Kirsten, good morning. Kira, good morning. Kira is working away on our next bingo game. I cannot thank Kira enough. You have to give Kira lots of thanks and kudos because she works really hard on these bingo nights. I have been so busy lately. And I love to get help. I appreciate the help. I need the help with all kinds of things because I am a one-man band at this point. Kirsten helps a ton with the website, and Kira's been helping a ton with our bingo night. So thank you so much. And you owe me nothing. We are having a lobster roll together, but you owe me nothing. I owe you a lot of time. Kirsten, Tara, good morning. Great to see you. And Donna, good morning. Sharon, good morning. Linda, good morning. Oh, Liz, you're checking in from the hill. So Liz is actually at the Hillstead right now in Farmington. It is a beautiful old house, and what an art collection they have. It's one of these sneaky deekies that, this house museum, very sort of local, huge and important collection of art, unexpected. And like a lot of other house museums, there's another one in the Berkshires. I forget what that's called off the top of my head, where the art collection does not move. It's part of the house. It doesn't share. It doesn't borrow. It doesn't lend. It's not a library. It's just permanently a really important art collection at the house, as well as a few beautiful rugs. Oh, I'm so glad you're logged on there. I'm going to zip up right after coffee time and see who's there. Linda, Beverly, good morning. Pat, good morning in Southern Ontario. I'd love to see that sun shining. Sue's, good morning. And Kate in DC, good morning and welcome. Brandy in Texas, good morning. Yes, please thumbs up, like, comment just as you are. It helps so much. Everybody's given thanks to Kira. I have many, many thanks for Kira. Thanks and hugs for Kira. So listen, um, I have I changed my idea for today's show 3 times this morning. And part of the reason for that is because I'm anticipating, tomorrow's our Zoom, so I'll have to post that. I forgot to do that already. Lynn, good morning. Relda, good morning. So I changed my idea several times, and again, the reason is because I'm projecting forward to having a nice, fluffy cocktail night on Friday, and my heart, as soon as I got into the content that I intended today, my heart started beating so fast, and I was just thinking, I gotta save it because it's too much. It's too big. I can't get it narrow. I can't shape it. It's overgrown. It's so good, and I'm saving it for Friday. So that's a to be continued. What I have for you today is amazingly excellent. This is going to be an episode just putting our toe in the water, talking about self-expression in rug hooking. This idea, this theme is one we will return to again and again and again. Never gets old, never expires as people create as ideas form and hatch and snowball. We will always have episodes on self-expression, but I want to use the Tamara Pavich book that I've used before many times. I have the Amazon affiliate link to this book in the description of this video, along with some of the recent patterns that I've just put out. I want to look at Tamara's sort of definition of self-expression, self-realization in rug hooking. It sounds like a very spiritual kind of spacey, new agey episode, and it might turn out to be. I can't say it won't. So it's going to be a fasten your seatbelts. But I just want to remind you, as I spit all over the place, I don't know why. Dunkin' Donuts, what did you put in my coffee? Tranquilizers or something, horse tranquilizers. I want to remind you that on the website, yesterday I posted the Matisse class, which will be the evening of, I think it's 6 to 8 Eastern Standard Time, Sunday, May 23rd. I'm just putting one date up for that right now. I'm sort of couching my dates right now in my trip to Cape Cod that's coming up too. So more on that. But I'm putting that Sunday right before my trip to the Cape. We always go the last week of May and then the following 2 weeks, the last days of May. So Matisse is up there, and that really fits into what we're talking about today. I always say to you, and I always will, as you hook, as you grow, as you evolve, forget about evolving actually, as you just do more work, as you pull your next pattern out and start working it without any sort of pretense of uniqueness or self-expression, without all that. Anytime you pull a pattern out, a commercial pattern, you should think about how you can alter it. Just take out your Sharpie and just make some lines, change it, morph it, make it yours, own it. You should always think about how you can do that. And that's part of what this episode is about. This episode, in terms of like talking about self-expression and self-realization in rug hooking, will go a lot further than altering commercial patterns. But that's a great start. And this design series that I've got evolving, there will be one every month from now until the end of time. I will want to be with you every month talking about a different artist, talking about how we can capture the essence of their style and use it in our own designs. Whether you're just superimposing jigsaw pieces that look like Matisse into the background, or you're changing clouds into jigsaw pieces on a commercial pattern, or you're going to go full blast, whole hog, pedal to the metal, and just start an original design. No matter what you're doing, it's going to be a great class for talking about the artist, his contemporaries, his world, and then we move into looking at some of his art and talking about how, particularly with Matisse, as a Fauvist, as an expressionist, as an impressionist, he worked very much in the style of Seurat, experimenting with pointillism. He worked across a lot of styles, but he is famously well known for having a very flat style, very flat shapes. And of course, that kind of style really lends itself to rug hooking. It's very, very graphic. But of course, his use of color and all these unique things about him, things that we'll talk about in the class, that's coming up May 23rd, and the sign up is already open for that. And the Fiestaware line is listed. I posted a bunch of things. Later this week, I'm releasing 2 more yarn lines for you, and you can choose 3-ply, a little bit thicker for hooking, or 2-ply that will fit through the punch needle that I sell, the one that is like the equivalent of a fine. It's a little bit bigger. It's between a fine and a regular, but very inexpensive and great for punching any of the 2-ply wool that I sell. Goes ripping right through it. Perfect every time. So those things are coming, and because I want to get to the Hillstead Museum today, I'm going to go right into introducing today's subject. So this book is called Rug Hooking Journeys by Tamara Pavich, and I'm going to return to this book many times, and I'm not going to hit a lot of my favorite parts of this book in this episode. I just want to introduce, with the half-hour episode, I want to introduce the idea of just self-expression, just approaching it, thinking about it in an academic way, leaving you some sort of seeds, some food for thought for when you're driving in your car or you're laying in bed at night waiting to fall asleep, to give you a start, a little roadmap, so that you can start thinking about self-expression in your future work and maybe original work that you would like to do, and how to go about pulling out some stories that you would like to tell. Because self-expression in rug hooking, essentially making a hooked rug about ourself, can be very daunting, right? How, first of all, you have to escape away, get away from that feeling of being vain for wanting to tell a story or show your face in a rug, because self-portraits are not vain, they're information, and they're creative, and it's reinterpretation, retelling, you know, the inner story of what the outside looks like, right? This is what I look like, but there's so many crazy things going on the inside you can't imagine. I bet you have a hint, but a suspicion, but there's a lot, and every person has so much else going on the inside, and we are, all people who are filled with a memory museum, all of the good things, all of the bad things, all of the hopes, all of the dreams, all of the forgotten things, all of it is inside. And when you put together a piece that is expressing yourself, whether it's a self-portrait or not, and we're going to talk about that. If you think about the tea kettle that I used as today's thumbnail, very different kind of a self-portrait, right? Bringing in not the reflection, right, but also the idea of housework, and that being a huge part of your life. For some people, that's the whole thing. So these are all things to think about when you approach the idea of doing something that is expressing oneself. So this book is the best book that I've ever seen for tackling this subject. Whether you are a rug hooker, a puncher, an artist, a sculptor, a writer, any kind of creative person, this is the best book I've ever seen for pulling this part, this layer out of yourself. So she talks about, in chapter 1, self-reflection and rug hooking. Windows into one's life. I'm just taking out the parts that resonated with me. Of course, when you have this book, there'll be other parts that resonate with you, but these are the parts I thought were the most sort of delicious and helpful. So windows into other lives, right? Without getting too transcendental and crazy. She says, when I discovered the rugs of Diane Cox, now Diane Cox is an amazing rug hooking artist, textile artist from Penzance, which is in Cornwall in the UK. We will spend a whole episode talking about her. So I'm just saying the name now, but we will spend at least one episode talking about her in tremendous detail because she deserves it. When I first discovered the rugs of Diane Cox, COX, and later the reflective pieces of many rug hookers, I found works that inspired much more than appreciation of beautiful artistry. In studying these rugs and stories, a viewer may join in the maker's reflections, sometimes playfully, sometimes with curiosity, and sometimes somberly. This book is a big collection of windows into others' lives. What do these rug makers allow us to see through these windows? In fact, about a dozen of the rug hookers whose work is featured here have depicted sorrow and injury. These are rugs through which they have attempted to heal or have experienced some kind of renewal or restoration of themselves. Another group has evoked alter egos, other selves, usually with undertones of humor, whimsy, or magic. Right? You see this a lot. You see, even writers there's some writers who are so famously self-deprecating and just constantly putting themselves down. Robin Williams was a classic example of this, wasn't he? May he rest in peace. But, you get these artists who are so creative, but their way of talking about themselves is so awkward to them that they go toward humor. And I think in many cases they do take themselves seriously, not too seriously, just seriously enough that it hurts a lot to be honest about yourself. So there is going to be that aspect of designing in this book as well. Good stuff and bad stuff, in other words. A large number of makers decided to capture an image of themselves in the past, the present, or even the future, inspiring reflections on who they are, where they've come from, and the relationships and places that have impacted their characters and identities. Now that's a huge part of it too, isn't it? Places, other people who have crossed our sort of orbit. This is all part of our story. This is all part of our huge overarching story. What do we mean by self-reflection, and what don't we mean by self-reflection? Now, this is a moving target, isn't it? This is very, very subjective. But I'm reading Tamara Pavich's chapter 1. So this is her words. I agree with her, but again, moving target. She says, how these are bullet points. How much a particular design might pique that viewer's curiosity about the maker. So you look at a design like the tea kettle and you say to yourself, how much of our world is the kitchen, is housework, is women's work, is interior, as opposed to being outside, wild, and free? Second bullet point, how widely the image opens a door to the character or the story of the person who held the hook and pulled the loops. That's interesting too. You know, a different angle, you know, not what they are, what they do, what they're about, but like, you know, who they really are. It's almost like a nesting doll, the story within the story. You're not just looking at what they're trying to tell you with the image that they created, but you're trying to read more into it. You're trying to find more clues on your own based on the limited amount of clues that they've given you. And bullet point 3, how the design might reveal the emotions and the sensibilities of the maker. And that is a quote from Joel and Kate Kopp from their famous book on rug hooking. So, since every rug somehow expresses its maker, we need to differentiate between self-expression and self-reflection. Arguably, every rug ever hooked is an example of self-expression. If I hook a commercial pattern or a fall leaves, I certainly express myself, to say nothing of my appreciation for fall leaves, right? She loves fall leaves. In my choices of color, value, intensity, and also through my method and style of actually hooking. When I design my own rugs, I take self-expression further because I become the creator of every aspect of it. The idea, the pattern, the way it's hooked, the color scheme, everything, including the design, the lines, right? So it is taking a lot more on. And again, I'm relating this back to Matisse because that's what these classes that we're doing monthly is about, relating to what's there, using pieces that are the best, in my opinion, the best pieces, the best choices that a particular artist has given you, and reformatting them, replacing them, reshaping them, creating a composition where you're borrowing other people's thoughts, ideas, inspiration, but you're making it your own. That's the challenge of doing anything with self-expression or self-reflection. So she says each artist included in these pages explores identity, broadens or sharpens his or her self or sense of self, works through difficulties, attempts to heal from losses, and or opens up new ways of thinking about him or herself. Self-reflection may be whimsical and lighthearted for some artists, serious and thought-provoking for others, and even profound and sobering for some. You know, this all reminds me of that book we looked at, what was it called? Barely Hooked, right? The purple cover, it was all nudes. It was all different kinds of self-portraits that were mostly nude. Not lewd, but nude. This crosses over a lot with the ideas we talked about in that episode of Coffee Time. Another way of saying I'm paraphrasing hugely here and skipping whole pages. Another way of saying self-reflection might be, here comes the sort of new agey stuff, mindfulness about oneself. Mindfulness is placing our calm attention on something and allowing it to appear more fully to us. I think the term calm reflection or attention is the key. For me, outside of coffee time, the 1/2 hour of the day where I can truly commit to being normal, I'm rarely calm. And I think that's the thing about mindfulness, right? It's too close to me, like to yoga and being bored and sitting around and being frustrated that I'm not working and active and busy. But I think the key is the calm attention, thinking about yourself, thinking about your design, thinking about what's next in a calm way, in an objective way, in a not emotional way. That's my biggest problem in life, is getting crazy and emotional in every situation, in traffic, at home, you know, at work, everything. For women especially, who may have devoted much time to the care of others, this gentle self-attention can be long overdue. The obligations of work, family, community often occupy the majority of our waking hours. So when we consciously devote time to self-reflection, we move in the direction of a healthy balance. Sometimes it's a balance we truly need. This also crosses over to one of those quotes from Cocktail Night this past week that was something like, what was it? It was the first one I did. Something about like, if you don't You can take care of other people, but if you don't take care of yourself, like something is incomplete. I can't get it now. I'll get to it eventually, but you probably know what I mean. It was such a zinger and such a good one. So she really, in this book, works you through workshop style, workbook style, thinking about things like cues to get you going, thinking about maybe subjects, thinking about composition, but real specifically bringing up ideas and memories that might help you come up with the beginning, the seed, the germ of a creative idea that could turn into a rug hooking composition. So she asks you questions like, who have I been? Think of past selves, all of our abandoned personas, the track athlete, the dreamy schoolgirl, the cafe waitress, the nursing student, the young mom, the devoted employee, and so on. Think about what yours are. I mean, I'm just reading that list. I'm thinking about, the waitress, the tour guide, the student so many times, so many things, right? And then that brings us to who have I wanted to be? And this is a different question. Your paths not taken are part of you, right? This whole Robert Frost two roads diverge, you know, whichever one you think is the better one, the one that's less trodden and more trodden, the one with traffic, the one with weeds, either way, I think all of us have come to crossroads or junctions in our lives where we've made choices. And I think you'd be a very sort of shallow person, no judgment intended, if you never thought back to those moments when you were at a crossroad and there was another choice. Hopefully you feel like more often than not you made the right choices when you were in those places. But we still think about them, don't we? These are the 4 o'clock in the morning, middle of the night, big thoughts that nobody really wants to have. But if you're a human person, you do think introspectively and wonder and worry. So this is all good stuff that I think it brings up. To take care of others, you must care for yourself. Thank you, Kate. That was it. I think that was perfect. And she asks, who am I now? Which is not who we meant to be and who we have been. It's who we are right now. Sometimes this is a tough one because you're not always exactly where you want to be in your life. Whether it's, with, again, getting away from new agey stuff, whether it's with relationships, whether it's with family, whether it's a location you want to be. I hate the town that I live in. I hate it. Things like this, who am I now? We're all much more than meets the eye. What is there about you that cannot be seen by a casual observer or ever by those or even by those who know you well? That's a tough one to answer. Is there hidden joy or sorrow, right? Secrets, a private hope or ambition? These are not 5-minute questions. These are things to really think about before you were to fill in pages like this, write something down. Who will I yet become? We continually learn to grow. Some of us need to find our braver and more active self. Some of us need to be quieter and less hectic. What does the future hold? And who might you be in 5 years or 10 years? These are such hard questions, but they're so super thought-provoking, right? I mean, it's so important to pose these questions when you're in the right frame of mind to answer them. It's not necessarily this morning or this month or this year, but at some point, it's maybe good to think about these kinds of big questions. What is it inside me that's wanting to come out? Think about courage, think about potential, think about who you're longing to be. I think, this book really reminds me, this reminds me of the kinds of workbooks that I liked to do when I was young. They weren't things that they gave us in Catholic school. They were things that you found at the store. They were like right up at the counter with all those pens that had 20 different colors that you could press down and choose the color for that 5 minutes. But, during that era, I remember when I was younger, filling in lots of workbooks about myself and what did I want to be when I grew up and was older and I had independence and choices. Who did I want to become? What kind of person? What qualities did I want to have? What kind of friends do you want to be surrounded by? This is the kind of book that brings you back to those moments. And I think she made a very good point that the older I think we get, the more involved and busy we get with daily life. And I think we often forget about those big open spaces where you have time to think and can think about more dreamy things. This whole thing is bringing me back to this crazy memory I had years ago, when one day, I must have been this is a crazy story that's coming at you. I must have been something like maybe 17, 18, maybe 18. And, I'd been working at Dunkin' Donuts and I was working as a waitress and I was busy, busy, busy. And I took the train into New York City by myself. And I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art because although I still can't hang out at a museum for long, I just don't have the stamina. I love art, but I just can't stand there all day and look at stuff. I get like real restless, looking for a cafe pretty quick. And it was the same in those days. And I remember one day I went by myself and I was all dressed up and I thought, God, I hope I look like so interesting, like such an interesting young lady, you know? And I stood at the Met in front of this giant abstract painting for like 45 minutes, just standing there. And I remember thinking, like, you know, I'm acting like I'm looking at something so specifically, so expertly. And I thought, God, I hope, this is such an adolescent thought, I hope I look interesting. God, let me be interesting, you know? And I noticed out of the corner of my eye that somebody came real close to me, that there was a man standing right next to me, real close to me. And I didn't look and I didn't flinch, and I was really pretending to be super focused on this thing that I was looking at nothing, right? I was just hoping that it worked. And as soon as he came over, I started thinking, God, this is working. Like, oh, I'm standing in a museum in a big city. I'm all dressed up. I must look like a super interesting person. And I stood there and stood there and stood there, and he stayed for so long looking at the side of my face, like this close up. And I turned, and it was the musical artist David Burns from the Talking Heads, who at the time was super famous. And I didn't even flinch when I saw him. I just looked at him, and I very, very coolly, you know, fixed my thing on my shoulder, my bag, and just walked on to the next painting. And I thought, oh my God, that worked. You know, it was one of those great moments that you're trying to set yourself up to be something. And it worked. In that moment, it worked great. I'll never forget that. I'm sure he did, but I'll never forget that. Just that huge time investment. It was super boring, but it worked. And I think that this book sets you up for thinking about life that way and bringing you back to a point where maybe you feel like more like a younger person looking at yourself from the outside and looking at yourself in a way that you would like to shape yourself rather than the way that you see yourself in the mirror. So we will hit in this book this category of composition, hook drug. Some of them are very literal, right? They're self-portraits. Others are not at all. So let's just look at a few. The teapot, I think, is astonishing. We're going to look at that in a minute. Let's first look at this Feeding the Forest. I'm going to show it to you first. This is designed by B.J. Caldwell and Lily Phillips. It was hooked in Council Bluffs, Iowa, 2017. Let me show you this, and then we'll talk about it for a minute. This one here is the one I'm looking at. So a little bit of a glare, but you can see there's a woman in this corner, and she's feeding the deer. And this composition has almost an Escher quality because it looks to me like there's so many deer in this herd that they almost become birds at the top. It's not mentioned in the description, but that's how it looks to me. There's so many that they become shapy, and then they kind of transform into birds. I don't know whether that's intended or not, but that is so smart. So, for example, this is a work of self-expression. This is a self-portrait. It's not a traditional one, is it? But in this one, she says, I started working on this with my mom, Lily, and we talked about hooking the funny moments in our lives and how we might condense them into one frame, like a single rug. She decided to exaggerate a moment in her life. While she loves to put out feed for the wildlife in her woodsy backyard, she has been astonished that her home has become a favorite eatery for whole herds of deer. She has seen as many as 20 at a time, and some will not run when she comes out to the feeder to refill it. So, in the spirit of the tall tale, she hooked her little self with her little bucket of corn and hungry deer as far as the eye can see. Now that is just a cool way to do a self-portrait. Can't even see her face. She's got on this fluffy winter hat. She's got her back to you. She's got a little bag of bird seed or feed or whatever, and then this herd of deer, long, tall composition as far as the eye can see. That's exactly what we're talking about here. These are beautiful self-portraits. These are beautiful self-portraits. This one very much in the style of like Gauguin with unexpected colors for shadow. This one very beautiful and traditional. The one that I said was more like Gauguin, hooked by Sharon Townsend in Iowa, and the one that's a little more traditional, so well articulated, Smile Please by Bridget Webb of Scotland. Those are much more literal self-portraits than some of the others in this book. for example, the teapot, right? This one here that I used as the thumbnail, I think is really extraordinary. This is done by Trish Johnston of Toronto, Ontario. This is an adaptation from my own sketchbook. She found a sketchbook that was from August of 1976, and her drawing looked like this. And it came out to look like this, just absolutely exquisite. And of course, the outlining gives it a bit of a cartoony characteristic, also kind of a humorous one. As soon as you start outlining something, it's either going to look like stained glass, like Tiffany, or it's going to look a bit cartoony and have a bit of a sense of humor. This one has so much humor, and it's so unexpected, the reflection in the teapot. She said, but many busy years have come and gone since 1976, and finally I'm at the stage where I have leisure again to actually adapt my drawing to a hooked piece. So, I mean, it's just so, there's so many directions that you can go in. This book shows so many examples of self-portraits. And like this one here, this is by Young Shepherdess, is by Kathy Stephen in Athens, Wisconsin, 2018. After a Millet painting, Jean-Francois Millet, you know, his classic pastoral rural paintings of France. She loved the one that this one is based on, and she really identified with the character in the painting. She says, I felt a connection to this girl. She reminds me of my life about 30 years ago as I was raising my children. I lived in a rural area with sheep flocks around at that time. We were gutting an old farmhouse and adding on to it. And with that work to do, as well as gardening, canning, raising the boys, I did not seek out activities or friendships. This is classic, isn't it? I spent a lot of time alone with my young kids around me, represented by the lambs around this girl. And I was thinking a lot, pondering, reading books, more sort of spiritual nature time for her, pondering life, the meaning of life, God, all these big thoughts. So this is a great example of, you know, there is an existing picture that looks like this, the sheep behind and everything, but she has really customized and personalized this Millet painting to make it her own, because she saw something in it that really resonated with her and felt like a self-portrait. So that's a great example. Of course, Millet is copyright free. You can do anything you want with paintings of that era. But, you know, this is another example of how you can take, if you don't want to start from scratch, if you have always felt a fondness or a connection to a specific image or painting, if you start there and you alter it and make it your own in that way, there's so much wiggle room. There's so much potential. There's so many things that you can add. This was just a great example of that. So I'm going to get going. I like to run over when I feel like it, and I do feel like it, but I really want to get to the Hill House and see who's there. Catch up with some of my buddies there. I hope that this was a good episode for you for inspiration. I'm certainly going to return to the theme of self-expression. I think it's a really important place to dig in, because as I've said a million times, when you're a rug hooker or you do punch needle, there will automatically built in be a part of you that is technical and a part of you that is creative, and you can't be 100% of both, right? That's impossible. So some people are like 90% technical, and you just want to fill in commercial patterns and make them as photorealistic as you can, and that's what you really enjoy. That's your passion. That's your creative outlet. And then there are people who are much heavier on the creative side. And for those people, it's so important to keep reminding you, push out. Don't just push over. Don't just push, you know, the fourth wall out. Push up, push under, push sideways, push diagonally. Think about things like this book poses, big questions that the book poses about who you are, where you want to be. Sooner or later, somebody will say something that turns on a light switch, or, you know, that thing that you needed to hear at that moment. Somebody will say that thing and you'll go, I got it. I got the idea for myself. It's my reflection in a tea kettle, or whatever it is for you. So it's great to look at a book like this and be able to get some ideas going. Thanks, Mom. You just ordered that book. Mom, I think you have that book. I think you have that book. But we can always do something else with it. It's a great book, but I think you have that book. So anyway, have a great afternoon. I will post Zoom, if you want to Zoom tomorrow. I will post that information in the Facebook group later, but I'm going to hot tail it over to Farmington and see my buddies at the Hillstead. Happy hooking. Thank you, Pat. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Pat, Ontario, I'm hoping everything opens in Canada soon because my great plan was to go last year to Canada. Um, and then my great plan was to go this year to Canada. Sooner or later, everything's going to open up and we'll all be able to cross over, visit, make contact again. I know it's a bummer and it's hard. It's kind of a hold your breath underwater thing for right now. It's a bummer. So I will let you know. I'll take some photos. Thanks, Holly. Thanks, Sheila. Um, thanks, Karen. So I will speak to you soon. I will be on Zoom tomorrow, and otherwise, cocktail time Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will see you then. Have a great day. Okay.